Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and for today's video, I'll be talking about a recent controversy that occurred in my state, as well as an explanation as to where this video series has been. Now, Mississippi getting bad press is about as common as red eye chucking a boomerang or cult of Dusty sexually exploiting women. Sometimes this is justified, like when that Madison prosecutor hoped protesters would get COVID. Though to be fair, she did specify that wanted the violent ones to do it, and let's be honest, this was completely unjustified. However, other times I would argue the outrage is unjustifiable. Indeed, there have been numerous controversies stoked by the prongs of outside agitators, people who have never been to or live in the state, as well as political opportunists within the state itself, like Chuckaway Lumumba, mayor of Jackson. In this particular example, we must go to the small city of Petal in Forest County. There, the mayor, Hal Marx, considering his last name, you'd think the left would love him, made some mildly critical comments about the George Floyd incident. To paraphrase, he said that someone who can say, "I can't breathe," actually can breathe. Here's the thing, he's technically correct and incorrect at the same time, but let me explain. In order for someone to speak, they must have air that goes past their esophagus. It's why you can't hear someone yell in space after all. However, despite this, Mr. Manx is still wrong, and I didn't really like his comment. Firstly, they were the most poorly timed internet comment in Mississippi history. Secondly, just because you have the ability to breathe doesn't mean you can function with the amount of oxygen available. I mean, this is the reason why you have to practice before climbing Mount Everest. Because even if you do breathe, the thin air and lack of oxygen can make you pass out, no matter how much you breathe in. Of course, this happened to George Floyd. He breathed, but it was not enough to sustain his body. Before we move on, let me make this clear. George Floyd did not deserve what happened to him. The officer was responsible and should be fired and put in jail. Okay, no one's denying that. Not even Mayor Manx said that the officer did a good job, despite what some media morons.
So shut up and listen! Number 3. We, as a community, are tax-paying citizens. So our voices deserve to be heard. At number 2, you owe the entire community, and you owe the friends and family of George Floyd an apology. Do it! And at number 1,
Think, hey moron, you do realize that when you're counting down, you're not supposed to leave your middle finger as the last one, right? You're supposed to do 1, 2, 3, like an order. That's not how you count down, dude. However, all of this is immaterial. No matter the tweet's exact nature, the response to it was insane and utterly unreasonable. Now let's go over some of that. First, there is that which is outside, and then we'll go over the internal criticism. Perhaps the largest and most popular video about this subject, at least until I make a video, was made not by local news, but by the Opportunistic Damage Report, a subgroup within the Armenian genocide-denying Young Turks.
It's Friday, and thus it's time to take out the trash.
Please don't talk to yourself like that, man. Anyway, these idiots then proceed to lecture and mock the fat dude before taking a photograph of him and throwing it in the trash. Nowhere is it mentioned to state the fact that this moron literally is freaking working with an actual Armenian genocide denier, who I would argue is a far worse human being than even this mayor. So you know what? I think both of you deserve to be in the trash. However, instead, I'm going to put you in recycling. Maybe this will be the only good thing you've ever done in your life, so you should feel happy.
Secondly, how do you watch that video and argue that he was able to breathe?
But because you don't know what breathing is, you uneducated moron. Breathing does not equal surviving. But this is minor to the next statement, which is utterly irresponsible.
Hal Marx, along with many other lawmakers in Mississippi, is a white supremacist who loves seeing this type of state-sponsored violence against people of color. That's who Hal Marx is, and he deserves to be in the garbage.
Okay, I would love to know how this charming human can look into someone's soul and decide whether they're a white supremacist. Also, I love how she ropes many other Mississippians that have literally nothing to do with George Floyd or Hal Marx. It's literally just another reason for her to sow discord and just dunk on Mississippi. I mean, I highly doubt Lumumba's a white nationalist. I'm sorry, Kasparian. I'm sorry. That guy's father was a black nationalist. And then they do this dumb little skit where John wastes paper he could be recycling, throwing a printed picture of Marx into the trash. As such, I have done the responsible thing and got out my recycling bin to dispose of this John trick. Here's where you belong, douchebag. Now that the outsiders have been dealt with, let's go over some local reactions. Now, of course, Marx's comments did attract local criticism, and for the most part, it was done in the peaceful manner, which I utterly respect, as peaceful protests are the only valid way to protest. But there were still some things worth criticizing. Firstly, am I the only one who finds it hilarious that this protest about Black Lives is led by a bunch of white Karens, including one that looks like a hippie reject? But there's also been affairs of media criticism by local people that's utterly BS. Firstly, there's the fact that he's gotten legitimate death threats from both Antifa and the Black Hebrew Israelites thrown at his family. Not even at himself. They've thrown at his family, which is completely absurd. Just because you're related to a politician doesn't mean you agree with said politician.
That shit look disgusting. You like a chunk of fucking... You just look like a chunk, like a slob. You know those little stress balls where you work them in like this and it's got like the sand and liquid inside?
There's, of course, people who made fun of the mayor's weight. Ironic fat shaming, I guess. Some people even going as far to say that because he is obese, he should be fired and unable to hold office. This is, of course, insane considering it comes from the people who look like Fat Albert rejects and the body positivity crowd. Never mind the fact that, I'll be frank, he's not that out of an ordinary. Not that Mississippi is all fat, but like, being obese does not infringe on your ability to hold public office. Then there was the gang of yellow-bellied cowards who make up the Board of Aldermen. They called on him to resign, passed an act of censure, which is infringement of freedom of speech, and tried to cut his salary. Apparently, they don't believe in freedom of speech. In response, Manx did the right thing and refused, saying that he will finish his elected term, which he should, as he won that election fair and square. And I think if they really want to replace him, they should wait till the polls come. If I could predict the future, is that it is likely, due to a combination of propaganda and genuine white guilt, will lead to an even more incompetent and likely black or double minority replacement Democrat. Of course, the reason I say this is because a lot of people, for some odd reason when I was researching this, always mention that Petal was founded due to white flight, as if only non-whites are allowed to move. Like, seriously, why is it that these same people who criticize Donald Trump for infringing on illegal immigrants who break the law by entering our nation are against white people moving around? Like, freedom of movement is not just for one race or the other. Also, can I just say, Like, why do they have a city meeting to ask the mayor to explain himself just to talk over him multiple times?
Nothing that I said in my mind was anything racial or if you look at
On the agenda, the Board of Aldermen discussed reducing the mayor's salary as a punishment and urged him to step down. He denied, but the public continued to push him to resign.
There is one police officer that has a moment where he could kill somebody. You have let him know that it is okay.
I'm sorry, black dude, since when did hypotheticals become evidence? I mean, like, first off, that cop you speak was likely going to do something wrong anyway, if at all. Thirdly, this is like a small town. I highly doubt, like, people are like, a lot of people are looking into Mayor Makes and being like, oh yes, I need his validation to shoot a black person. Well, that's absurd. Luckily, there were some reasonable people within the crowd, and here's a clip of one of these reasonable people.
I've watched him stand up for people's civil rights. He's stood up for small businesses. He has stood up for pedal. He has helped keep our taxes low. He's all about freedom of speech.
It's like you can talk if you say the same thing we're saying. If you disagree with what we're saying, then we're going to shout you down and vilify you. And it's not acceptable.
And he's right. If you believe in freedom of speech for yourself, but not for those you disagree with, are you really for the First Amendment? I mean, we're not meant to have a hug box. Are you even a rational human being? Was Manx's comments poorly timed and partially incorrect? Absolutely. Does that mean we should let the mob bend the knee to them and, like, force him to resign? Unless you believe that the legitimate election beforehand should be just illegitimized, I don't think so. Why should we bend the knee to the mob? This is how lynchings happen, by the way. But, because the mob's, non-white, I guess it's fine. So yeah, that's about it. As for why I don't make videos so often on local matters as regularly as I used to, it's simple really. I've had burnout on that. Secondly, I've noticed that I'm really bad at unscripted videos, like terrible. It's why I don't do debates that often, unless I get time to prepare beforehand. But this was a really big topic, and I felt that it was extremely important to speak out, because the people on the media, the people like Cult of Dusty and Pimp Monk, they threw this man out of the bus, and they're not doing an intellectually honest thing. Don't worry though, weeks will be back to normal, as a Lego Ninjago video will be released, and if I can manage. At the same week, I'll also do a Kirby Right Back At You retrospective video, just so that I can keep up the every other week thing.